Hello and welcome back to Building in a Small Town. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. I wanted to drop in and say a quick thank you to those of you who are listening and ask for a quick favor. Can you please hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening? And while you're at it, can you also take a moment to drop a rating and review? It helps others find the podcast and is a free way to support the show. Thank you so much. My guest today is Brett Comegys. He is the mayor of Collins and the reason Willie and I wound up in this little tiny town. You'll hear how a friend of his convinced him to join the Marines, how he wound up earning 3 different college degrees in a 1-year span, and why he decided to run for mayor over a decade ago. Brett is an idea man by nature and has been a catalyst for lots of change and progress in this little town. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you will too. Welcome to Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. Hello and welcome back to the Building in a Small Town podcast. Today I am joined by another Collins local. I'm joined by the mayor of Collins himself, Brett. Thank you so much for stopping by and sitting down with me.
No problem.
So you are not a Collins original, are you? You didn't grow up in Collins.
Well, no, I didn't grow up in Collins. I was born at the old General Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay.
It's torn down now. I think there is a Mexican grocery store there or something to that effect. And most of my life I was raised in Bondurant. And I have 2 brothers born in California. My sister was born in Iowa with me. And then I left Bondurant for about a year and a half to Ankeny. Then I came back to Bondurant and graduated from there. And then I think I came to Collins maybe, almost 25 years ago with my wife.
Okay. And so Bondurant at the time, though, Bondurant was little bitty. I was going to say, Bondurant is not the Bondurant that we know today by any means.
49 kids in my graduating class.
49.
And we had 50, but one of them just
didn't.
Fell a little short.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple months.
Okay. So that was back when Bondurant was about the size of Collins then. Maybe a little bit bigger, but
well,
not.
we would have been, I remember wrestling against Collins Maxwell, or Maxwell for sure. So I know we were 1A with them. I mean, they were small.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they are now. They're playing in the big leagues. They're up against, big schools now. So
I was gonna say, I think they're at least 3A these
they're
days.
at least 3A, but there's some stuff I see them competing with the Yankees and Sally's Pokes and stuff, and that's really wild for me.
Yeah. Well, it'd be real weird if and when they get a second school, but I don't know the way their growth is going.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going to put it. It's just, they're growing like weeds. So
that's true, too. They're getting in a little bit of a turf battle between them and Altoona at this point of who owns what and where the lines are drawn.
Well, now they know what Ankeny's been doing with everybody else around them. So
Yes, for sure. Okay, so grew up in Bondurant. You wrestled in high school.
Yes.
Did you go to college afterwards?
Kind of. I've been around a lot of different places. I mean, I went to college. When I was in high school, about a week or 2 after high school, state wrestling tournament, and I was a qualifier. Didn't place or anything, but that was back in the one and done phase. You lose one, you're done. And about a week or 2 after that, I went down and joined the Marine Corps. So I joined the Marine Corps on February 28th, 1990. And I graduated high school on March 25th. And by March 30th, I was on a plane to MCRD, California, where I started boot camp. And then when I was what they call as a 180-day reservist. And then, so you spend your first summer, then the next summer after college, you go to your school, which mine was infantry school. It was Marine Corps infantry. And so when I got back, I got home on a Friday, and then Monday I was starting class at Iowa State. And that's when the Persian Gulf War was starting to roll up. And so every day is like, well, they're gonna pull you out. So of course, I was living life like I was gonna be gone tomorrow, which didn't include a whole lot of studies. And so I ended up leaving school early because we got activated, and then they ended up sending me to California to train. And then by the time I was done with that, the war was over because it only took 100 hours of ground war, and 100 months of cleanup after that or whatever it was. And then I came back home, and I don't know what I did. DMAC, I think, for a while, and so I've been to Iowa State twice, DMAC, Grandview, UNI, and Graceland and Viterbo. So I've got my AA through DMAC. I've got a bachelor's through UNI and through Iowa State, and I've got a master's at Graceland University and my special ed certification at Graceland, which is the equivalent of the master's, and then I've got a master's program, educational leadership through Viterbo. So I've been everywhere except the Hawkeyes.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you signed up for the Marine Corps in February of your senior year, haven't even graduated yet, what had you always been kind of pulled to the military and that end of service, or was that something your parents encouraged you to do? Like, how'd you wind up walking into that recruiter's office and being like, I am ready to sign on this dotted line?
Well, I had a buddy who was going to get a K-bar if he got somebody enlisted, which is like a knife. It's like $20 or whatever, but it's what the Marines carry, and he'd got in, and he wasn't that physical. I'm thinking, wow. But full disclosure, I kind of fell in love with the Marines years ago. I remember back in 1980, and this is a long time ago. I graduated in 90, but in 1980, I remember when Ronald Reagan became president, and everything got really patriotic, and I got hooked into that. And so I always wanted to join the Marines. And I remember telling my grandma out in California, and they were Navy people. I mean, grandma and her friends were all Navy gals, and my grandpa, they all went to the Navy. And so I remember saying something when I was a kid, like, she's sitting around with her friends, and Grandma, I want to join the Marines. And Grandma was pretty rough and tumble, and she had every nasty word she can think of. And she spoke, I mean, she was worse than a truck driver. And all them dirty Marines and blah, blah, and, because back then, after World War II, the Navy and the Marines were always, fighting each other out. And so I never camp again. And then by the time I went to high school, obviously the bug was kicking in, so I joined, and I'm glad I did. I mean, it was one of the best choices I made.
Yeah.
And but then I just came home when I went to the recruiter's office and said, Mom, guess what I did? And she said, what? And I said, I joined the Marines. And she goes, oh boy. She didn't say oh boy, but she said something to the effect that I won't repeat here. And that was it.
But you were 18 at the time, so there was nothing,
do whatever
they could do at that point.
They never really told me to do a whole much. I had one expectation from my dad, which was the only thing my dad really told me, rules was, don't get put in jail, call your mom now and then, don't get anybody pregnant, and you are going to graduate college because you're the last one I got, and you're going to be the one who gets it. And I roundabout, I went through it, and I finally got there, but it took me a while, but I got there.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So when you go to Iowa State that first time, knowing full well you're not going to finish that first time because you're going to...
Well, I didn't know anything at that point. I got in there it's different now. They do such a good job educating kids. I work in a school, and we really take kids on tours to MCC or take kids to DMAC, or we've taken kids to UNI and stuff. We do such a good job, and everything's visual now. The internet's obviously it wasn't even existent on our level when I was in high school. But the idea of going to college was just show up and go. And so I just showed up and went. And I didn't have a schedule to the day I walked on. And literally I picked up Russian, some math class with a German guy, couldn't understand a word he said. Astrology, because I was following the girls. I thought, man, if I could look at the stars and tell the constellations, this would be a good pickup line, type of thing. And I don't know what else I got. I mean, it was some other class. It was a history class, which was more, specific to me, something I had an interest in. But I had no business. I was not ready for that. So
at that point, it's safe to say you didn't have like a major chosen or a particular path that you wanted to go down?
I had a major, but it wasn't something that was on the register. I mean, I was registering and partying. That was where I was at. So
yes.
And I had a good time. it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
wasted money, but I could have done that at home,
Fair, but also, yeah.
part of the process.
It is all part of the process. Okay, so you go off and you're a Marine infantryman and all of that. You end up deployed to the Gulf?
Well, you know what? No, I didn't. I ended up going to California to do training, which ended up being just miserable because they'd been in a drought for 5 years, and they had more rain in the first month that I was there than they had in 5 years combined.
Of course.
And so we were flooded, and we were always wet, and we were always walking and so it was actually pretty miserable training. And I was a little out of shape because obviously I'd been living like I was going to die, for the last 4 or 5 months, partying up and stuff. And so when I got there, I was not prepared to do what I did. And I got through it, obviously, but I was not an elite Marine at that moment, when I walked in the door. And of course, when I left, I wasn't feeling pretty good. But, and then by the time we were out and cycling back, the guys who I would have gone with were already coming home. So I missed that one.
Gotcha. So did you end up international at all? You just...
most of my time in, and I have almost 14 years in, was either preparation or was training scenarios. And I part of me would say I'm really lucky that they just, actually having to go out and kicked indoors I didn't have to deal with that, but part of the way I feel real guilty I didn't either, because that's what you sign up for, and why them? Why are they have to do it? And it was nothing. I wasn't dodging it. I wasn't trying to avoid it. My number never came up, I guess. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's common for servicemen who end up in a peaceful time. I think that was common in the lead up post Gulf War up until 9/11. You look at majority of the 90s.
I went back in after 9/11.
Did you? Okay.
I went back in the Army National Guard. I went in as an intelligence analyst then.
Okay.
And so there was a window where I could have been deployed, but I was getting out before I would have got back. And so
yeah,
I stayed home.
Just ended up timing.
Timing was it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and it's just needs of the military. And they put you where, and it's sometimes just roll of a dice. I don't think you feel guilty for that, but I understand.
No, but I don't feel guilty by something I did. I don't have any regrets in anything. That's not where I'm at, but it's almost like a survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
That you have. And then there's always that, I shouldn't say I don't have a regret. I'm a history guy. I mean, obviously I teach history. And I have a certain connection to it, but a lot of the things I talk about, things I get passionate about in class, and the only thing I can draw the kids in is telling these stories about these people and all these things they've done and stuff and places they've been. And, when you have a short window where you could be part of that history and it doesn't happen, then you feel like, well, you regret that. I mean, you wish you could have had a sensibility of it, but on the same note, to what end? I mean,
right.
Where'd we end up over there? And that part is frustrating, the way that ended up. And I won't get into that, but I just think it was wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So you go to California, you go through your training, you come out a little better human perhaps than you were when you went in, at least better physically conditioned. So then you come back. Do you go back to school right away?
I worked a little bit because I came back in an odd time, and then I went back to DMAC and did that for 3 semesters, and then I transferred up to UNI for a year, and then I had to drop out for a while, for about 5 years, and then I went back, and when I went back, everything started happening really fast. I just didn't slow down after that point.
Yeah.
So
when you went to you did your associates at DMAC, right? Basically, just got your gen ed stuff out.
Well, I didn't even get done with DMAC. I left there to go to UNI to live with a buddy of mine, the guy who suckered me into the Marine Corps. And
maybe you need to quit following.
I know. Yeah, he lives in Minnesota now, but anyway, he lived right down the street from me. We'd been friends forever, but I lost my train of thought.
So you go to UNI. You go to
Yeah,
UNI.
I went to UNI and went up there, and then, like I said, life happens, and I ended up leaving school for a while, and then my first daughter came along, which was really the catalyst for that. And then, you have an unplanned life change, and so I left and just worked jobs I hated for a while, and then one day I just woke up and I said, man, is this really who you want to be? Is this what you want your kids to think of you when you're old? And so then I got my act together. I just quit my job and just jumped in with both feet and just figured it out. Worked 3 jobs and tried to raise my kid and go to school. And
so at the time when you have that 5-year hiatus, shall we say, did you stay up in Cedar Falls, or did you?
No, I was back here.
Okay, you were back here in Central Iowa. Okay. So when you went up to UNI initially, that was not motivated by, had you decided on the education path yet? Like, had you decided that you were going to eventually become a teacher?
I knew probably.
Okay.
It was teaching school, and I was taking a lot of history classes, and obviously I've been always gravitated towards the history because that's why I teach now. It's just a natural fit for me. But I played around with a couple different ideas, but yeah, I was probably going to be teaching.
Yeah. Okay. So you finish up with UNI the second time. Did you go?
Well, actually, when I didn't, it's funny because UNI sent me a letter and said I have credits to graduate. So really, okay, okay. So I sent the letter application and they sent me a diploma, and there was nothing formal with that. And then at that time, I was wrapping up Iowa State around the same time. So everything started happening. So I got, within 1 year, I got my A degree. I got my degree from liberal sciences, Bachelor of Sciences from UNI, and then I got my history degree from Iowa State.
Okay.
And just boom. And then I had my first job interview, I had a job offer, and I started teaching.
Okay.
That was it.
And where was that first job offer?
Hubbard Radcliffe.
Okay. So little school.
Little school.
At this time, you guys were based in Collins already. Yes.
No. I was not with my wife yet.
Okay.
And I think the first place we lived together was in Colo. I think I was living at Radcliffe when we first started dating, and then we ended up Colo for 6 months and came to Collins, and then we've been here ever since. So.
Okay. And she's originally from Collins.
She's a lifer.
Okay.
She's only been out of this town for like 6 months.
Well, I say she got out to Colo for a little bit.
Okay, maybe 9 months. I mean, she hasn't been out of here very long. And she always stayed here because of her grandparents, and they're gone now. So it's a little, and of course we're raising kids now, and so we got one left who's graduating this year, and then after that, I don't, who knows what'll happen. But
yeah,
we always talk about maybe we should move, but where we're going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not attached to any place else. Why not just stay, I guess, so.
Yeah, maybe somewhere with a little less harsh winters.
Well, but then you go somewhere else. There's always something no matter where you go. You can't go to Colorado. You can't go to Florida because then you worry about hurricanes. And they have tornadoes in Texas too. And so.
That is true. There's drawbacks to everywhere.
Yep.
There's benefits to everywhere as well. Okay, so you get this first job at Hubbard Radcliffe.
Yeah.
Is it teaching history?
I had 6 different preps a day. So I taught social studies. I taught psychology, sociology, American history, world history, American government, and I taught a session of PE. And geography, I forgot about that.
Holy cow.
And it's my first year teaching. I was 28 years old. Luckily, I was a little bit, I had a little more confidence, I guess, or a little, I don't know, gravitas, I guess, than somebody who just walked out at 22. And a lot of these kids were farm kids, and they were a really good football program. And out of the 64 boys in the school, 46 of them played football.
Okay.
And that's the whole, 9 through 12. And so it was, these were big farm kids and stuff. And the fact that I'm 5'9", I could walk in there and keep my line a little bit, but also keep my sanity and teach so many classes. I thought I was doing pretty good.
Yeah.
But I was a day ahead of everybody. I had textbooks, and I would just figure it out.
Yeah, as
what
you
do.
You had to. Okay, so you taught high school right away, though.
Yeah,
so
I taught high school.
Was your PE high school as well, or was that?
Yeah, oh yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I wasn't legal to teach it. They had to get the PE teacher planning period. So they said, hey, you're free.
Yeah.
So, okay, whatever.
Okay, so how did you? Wow, I'm just having 6 different classes. That's a lot.
For a first year teacher who just, and some of those classes I'd never really, econ, I guess I taught I mean, I had, depends on what semester it was, it would fluctuate a little bit. So it wasn't even the same class all year long. It would be,
Yeah,
you have
semester
to change
to
up.
semester. Wow, that is quite the course load.
Yeah.
And so how long did you end up staying at Hubbard Radcliffe then?
About 5 years.
And did you have to do those 6 that entire 5 years?
Oh,
or
yeah.
were you
I was the
graduated?
entire history department.
Holy cow.
And then I was the head wrestling coach. I was an assistant football coach. I was a junior high track coach, and I taught driver's ed in the summer.
You were busy.
Yeah. And then I left that job to go work for the Army full time, Army National Guard.
Okay.
That's when I rejoined, and that was in 2011, maybe. No, 2006 is what it was. And I worked as a recruiting retention officer for a year, and then I slid out of that and became an intelligence analyst, and I got a top secret security clearance, which sounds really cool. It is really cool, but I had the same as top secret SCI security clearance. It's the same security clearance the president has. Mm-hmm. But I don't get the information the president has.
Right.
It sounds really cool, but you don't. It's only cool when you get information. And but I worked out of Des Moines with that, and then I went back in teaching. I taught special ed for a couple of years, BD, for 2 years at Hoover, then 2 years at SciSpoke, and then they basically cut my position because they were having budget changes or whatever, and the workload had changed. And before they were able to offer me a different job, I had 3 other interviews and 2 other offers, and I ended up at where I'm at now, teaching social studies again. So I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, and you're at Marshalltown
Yes.
now, right?
Yeah.
And Marshalltown High School. So
8th grade. I teach
Okay.
8th grade social studies.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's a good age. 8th grade is a good age.
It is. I mean, 7th graders and 8th graders, that's what we have in our building. 7th graders are kind of like puppies. They follow you around everywhere. And 8th graders are more like cats where they don't want anything to do with you.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're fine.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think 8th graders are, I don't know which one would be harder, 7th grade or 8th graders. But
8th
yeah,
grade
I
is,
suppose
I'd
that
much
is-
rather have 8th grade.
Would you?
They're just mature enough to where you can have a conversation with them, and they're not, they're maturing a little bit, but they're still kids, and you can
Right.
still, and some teachers really struggle with this age group because you have to have the right kind of personality. You just do. If you don't, good luck. You won't last. These don't last very long.
Do you mean because the kids are, what do you mean?
Well, education has changed a lot anyway, so it's not just the kids, but the kids, you have to have, if the kids are like sharks, man, if they smell blood, they'll swarm and they'll ruin you. I mean, they'll take you over, and you just got to be able to just keep them in check in a way that's not puffy chest and in your face type of thing. You got to just know how to manage them, and there's a skill set to it, and not everybody has it.
Yeah.
And, but for the most part, I think the most important thing you teach middle school or any kids is you have to set your non-negotiables. And these are things, little stuff. You don't have a pencil. I got a pencil. Now, am I irritated? Yeah, but I got a Chromebook. Don't worry. I got a spare Chromebook. Charger. I got 4 of them. Don't worry about that. But if you're not in my class on time, that's a problem. And I watch kids go in other people's class all the time. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it's pretty rare they come in my room. It's pretty rare to call the office. It's pretty rare to escort somebody out. I mean, I just don't have the other issues that other teachers have because I know how to respect the kids, but hold them accountable in a way that's not over the top. And I don't make a mountain out of an anthill type of thing over issues. I focus on the non-negotiables. And because of that, I think for the most part, the kids, they just respond.
Right.
So-
They respond and they respect you. You have your standards set. They're not or like you said, not over the top standards. You're not asking
I'm
too
not
much.
unreasonable.
No, it's just the basics.
And I don't take it personal too. When a kid has a bad day, they're having a bad day. It may be because of something happened outside that school that you can't control. Why do you want to beat a kid over a bad day that he's already having that probably started long before he saw you?
Right.
And so you got to be willing to recognize those things and have those conversations and be able to just treat every day like a new day. And, I'd even say every minute like a new minute. You just got to be able to shift gears that easy and just, once again, not take it personal, brush off an issue and move on. And sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you got to step away because something really gets you. I don't care how good you are and how long you've been doing it, but I don't have a lot of those. I feel good about that.
That's good. Yeah, it's got to be nice too to have one focus of just social studies now.
But social teaching is a lot different than it used to be when I got into it. They used to always promote this idea of autonomy, where hey, you get to do your own thing, your own classroom, nobody messes with you, and that's not true. Not anymore. It used to be that way, and you see a lot of veteran teachers who struggle from going from that autonomous classroom to this cooperative teaching, this cooperative model we have to have with other teachers now. And it's all about professional learning communities and building common assessments and doing all these things and pacing and the veterans who struggle to step into that mentality are the ones who are getting left behind. And then you got the new teachers who don't know how to be autonomous when it comes into play. They don't know what to do when their projectors don't work or the internet's not working. They don't have a bag of tricks to fall back on like teachers do who didn't have those things before. So I'm in a pretty good spot where I can kind of just straddle both sides of both worlds and it doesn't matter what happens. Generally, I can figure something out. So
yeah. No,
I don't have any wasted time in my classroom. I can always go to something else. I've always got something.
Even if something's not working or something like you said.
I expect it not to work, and part of that is because some of that is the way I was raised. You just figure things out. But part of that's, goes back to that military training. Mm-hmm. Is, you plan on the worst. Don't expect support. Don't expect anything. You got a mission, get the job done. Don't come to work and complain about how bad things are. This is the job. You don't like the job, go find a different job.
Right.
And people do. And it doesn't mean you can't complain or vent sometimes, but long story short is you still got a job to do and you got to still step up and do it. And it doesn't matter what goes wrong, just make it happen.
Yeah. You signed up for it, so.
Well, and it's the way it is in the military. That's the way it is when you're helping run a town. I mean, the same thing. I mean, things happen that you don't expect. You don't sit there and stare at it because it's not going to get done by looking at it.
Right.
Just find a way to do it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. How long have you been the mayor of Collins?
This is my 8th term, so I'm about 14 and a half in.
Does it feel like it's been 14 and a half?
Yeah, it does.
What compelled you in the first place to be like, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring?
Well, every assessment, and those assessments you take when you're a kid, they're really good. Mm-hmm. They said I could either be a cop, I was going to go in the military, I was going to be a judge, a lawyer, a politician, a history teacher, a professor. That's every one of them. And, I'm at a point where I probably could teach college courses on the side. I've been in the military. I almost went to law school. If it wasn't for the money, that was when I went back to school. Was one of the two.
You're a history major. So
I was very close. I was very close to going, and I would have I got a good mind for that. I really do. I mean, there's some things you're good at and some things you're not, and you lean into strengths. And I think interpretation of the law and presenting facts and stuff is pretty good area for me. But it just seemed like the right thing. And I, people were talking about how the town was dying all the time. The town's dying. We might have to unincorporate whatever. And I didn't want my kids to be raised in that. I'm like, we can do better than that.
And so this would have been like 2010-ish, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2010, did it feel like the town was dying? Like,
yeah.
Why? Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what were there specific events? Were there things that closed down? Were there people that
Main Street was barren. There's nothing here. And it was all boarded up or things were decrepit or dilapidated. And then you've got, almost no business in town, was just non-existent. And, you got a lot of people who are all going different directions. And just the mood was just a negative energy. And I think people still want to do some good things around here, but they didn't know what to do about it. And, when you have a problem, you don't necessarily have to have a solution, but you got to start moving a direction.
Right.
And you take that one step at a time, and you start putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually you're going to get where you want to go. And I knew that there were, 3 main areas that this town could improve on. And so when I came into it, every year I'd focus on one area, the next, and I just keep rotating back. And when things come up and you don't plan on having, all of a sudden people's houses are flooding. Okay, I guess I'll take a break from this and go focus on this for the next year, and which is what's had to happen. But, we've done a lot of things with, bringing in some new housing. The houses hadn't built. There hadn't been a new house built here in 20 years before I got in here. We've had a handful of them, which is really good because we've been able to tear down old houses and build these in-lots. And our main street is really completely different. And just a fresh coat of paint is an amazing thing. I was able to go to the county and talk the county into instituting a couple of different grants, which would directly benefited us, and, recruiting people to come in, changing attitudes, trying to get more people involved. And then pretty soon what happens is when you are a catalyst for change, the change starts to go on its own. You don't necessarily have to work so hard because other people say, well, we could do this and we can do this. And then things start bouncing off each other. And pretty soon you start having more and more positive energy. And, I think one of the first things that really, I think, helped this Main Street was the idea of a wellness center. Everybody thought I was crazy for that. But here we are, 14 years later, it's still going.
Yeah.
And
so was that a like kind of first order business when you got, how old is the wellness center? I mean,
well, about 13 years maybe. It within the first year.
I was going to say that's like 2000. Yeah, that'd be 2011, 2010. Something
I had
like that.
to see the way I looked at it was, okay, we can make a fitness center, and what we can do is we can raise grant money, which I'd never written a grant before. We can raise grant money, and then we can use that to rehab a building. And once we rehab that building, then what we can do is we can rehab that and then move to a different building and rehab that one and just keep working down Main Street. Well, we fixed 3 buildings with that mentality. And that's huge on a small Main Street, but all of a sudden those 3 buildings are viable now. And everybody thought, like I said, they just, well, it won't work. And the council were a bunch of old guys, and they're all good dudes. Most of them are gone now. In fact, at least 3 of the 5 are passed away now. But they couldn't wrap their minds around the idea. But I think we're getting tired of me just asking. So I was asked a million questions when I came in. That's the big thing is you have to be curious when you get into something, because if you're not curious, you're never going to find your way. You just got to ask a lot of questions.
And what were you asking? Were you just
everything from where does this money go here? Where does that, why have you guys done this? Why isn't, just everything that would just annoy you to death. Like, why is the sky blue, Daddy? Type of thing. And I think they were annoyed. And finally I said, listen, I want to raise some money for this wellness center. I don't want it to cost the city anything. Will you guys let me write some grants for it? And like, well, I said, okay, I'll tell you what, if I get a petition with 100 people signing that they'd participate in this, will you do this? They go, if you get 100 names, you can do what you want. I said, fantastic. Everybody agree? Great. I pulled out a piece of paper with 100 names on it. And I says, well, I'm starting tomorrow. And they're like, oh crap, and I just kept going.
Okay. So how long had you been in Collins before you got elected? You said you've been here about 25 years.
No, I might be stretching the 25 years, probably closer to 22.
Okay. So you then at that point had been in Collins for less than 10 years, most likely.
I think my daughter was 2. She's almost 18 now. She's probably 2 or 3 years old. I mean, she's a little bitty. So I hadn't been here in probably 5 years.
Okay. Were you running uncontested?
No, there's 3 other people that ran.
Okay, then tell me about that campaign.
I had a brochure, and I had 4 signs I made. I put them in yards. I had a brochure I made up, and then I just took them out and door to door and handed them out, and I got like 86% of the vote. But full disclosure, the people running, I don't think they just put their name in because nobody else was doing it.
Yeah.
And then, so I went through some phases where nobody wanted to run against me because they obviously either didn't want to do it or thought I was doing good. And then I had a couple of years where I had, a little competition, and that didn't work out for them very well. Or me, depends on how you look at it. I'm still here. I'm still dealing with it. And then I had at least one year I didn't even put my name on the ballot. They just wrote me in.
Right.
So I guess that's what happens when you're in a small town and
Yeah.
you're not making too many people mad at you.
Well, and that's why I didn't know if that first one, if you ran uncontested, because I had known that subsequent ones you had been uncontested, and I knew about the one where you didn't actually run and everybody wrote you in, or enough people wrote you in that here you still sit. But so for that first one, it's one of those things. Your wife's a lifer, so she was at least known within the community. But then would you just say that it was a matter of effort like that? You just...
I think it was effort where, hey, if he wants it, let him do it. And the other thing is, I know at least one of the other people that I was running against was a woman. And there was an old crowd around here. There's still a lot of people thinking, well, that's not woman's work type of thing, So I have a feeling that was probably some of that. And sometimes not being known works in your favor. Because if you're around here long and you make connections, those connections aren't always good.
Yeah, they're not always great.
Not always good. So you can actually, put yourself in a dark corner if you're around people too long. And luckily I don't have too many people here that just, a lot of people here, newer people here just don't know me. But the people who do know me, even the ones who may not always agree with me, I think they think that I have the best interests of the town at heart. And because of that, they tolerate me.
Right. Yes. Okay, so you get this wellness center up and running. You get the ball rolling despite not necessarily the greatest support from the council initially. There was one guy on that council, and I to this day, he was Winston Ratan. He said, I don't think it's going to work. Did he say why?
He just thought it was a crazy idea.
Okay.
He says, but I'm gonna help you if I can. I'm gonna give you a shot. And so he came in and helped with the wiring. He kept, we had to redo a bunch of stuff in the place, and I know this building, and he put in a lot of effort, physical effort doing things. He said, I think you're crazy. And then after that, he's like, well, maybe you aren't crazy. And then every time something would come up, he'd say, whatever the mayor says, I'm with him, and okay. I won one guy over. And then at that point, the battles were a little easier.
Right. So that first building, which building was the wellness center in originally?
It's right across from here. It was actually a hardware store, and then it was a laundromat, and then it was a crack house. And then we got in there and cleaned it up. And now, once we left there was a pro wrestling troupe in there and some other things. And
okay, so it's the building down on the corner.
Yeah, it's right in the corner.
Was originally where it was?
Yes.
Okay. And then it moved to, there was possibly yoga done in my building.
Yes,
as well?
we renovated that building as an annex.
Okay.
And so we were able to raise grant money from that. We used that for a while. And then we shipped it down to this other building once it came, and I was negotiated to get that donated to the city for $1. Mm-hmm. And once we got that, then we just raised more money. And
that building's previous life was a bar, somebody told me?
There was a bar there.
Okay.
And even before that, there was half of it was a leather shop, I think.
Okay, like custom leather?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Before my time. My wife remembers that. That actually goes back to the old, I don't want to say scandalous time of Collins, but that's our big murder. We had a murder in Collins years ago, and that was...
What?
That guy worked out of there. Oh, yeah.
What is that story?
Well, I hate to mention names, and I probably won't, but he's still alive. His wife isn't. But
because of that?
Yeah, he killed her.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and that was just right down there off the Highway 65, and I wasn't there. But I know that he was not very tall, and she was real tall, and he had to, take means to...
How long ago was this?
It was 82, 84, something like that. My wife was a little kid. She saw, and there was people here in this town who were, and they're still related to him. So I don't want to, go too crazy, but
I'll Google it.
Go ahead. I can't stop you from finding things, yeah. but I mean, it's just, you start making all these little historical connections. That's the history that people aren't really excited to talk. They're proud of. But it's a fascinating part of the history because that was, I know that drugs were involved in that situation, stuff like that. And that's not just that's something we've dealt with in this country for years and years. And so you got, I don't know. And then you ask, how does that affect the people who are still alive, and how did that affect them when, it's just a lot of fascinating questions because I got the historical mind thinking, everybody
Right.
wants to just look at the positive stuff, but the negatives shape us too.
Yeah.
And that put Collins on a map for a while in a bad way, but at least we're on a map, the people knew we existed.
Possibly not for the reason that you wanted.
No, not for a good reason. And like I said, I feel horrible for the people involved in all ends. But yeah, that's big excitement here in Collins.
Wow, I was not aware.
Yeah,
of
you
that.
hear about the train derailment that happened out by roads. You hear about stuff like that. People talk about that, but they don't want to talk about those things. And I guess and same with my teaching, and same thing when I talk about the military or whatever. You got to talk about the good. You got to talk about that bad to appreciate the whole.
Right.
And if you don't have enough integrity, honesty to confront the things, in history that didn't go very well, then, our state's been really hammering down on what you can talk about, what you can't, because they don't trust the integrity of some teachers. And I get that, but, they tiptoe, even talking about, the 1850s and slavery and things like that. And I tell it how it is. I'm not here to glorify or glamorize anything, but it's part of us.
Yeah, context is important. Context
It is.
matters. And like you said, it has impacts much further than anyone would ever necessarily see while it's happening.
That's right.
So yeah, I appreciate that you do that because I think like you said, tiptoeing is fairly common of just not wanting to pretend like certain things didn't happen or like that impact.
Well, nobody wants to get in trouble.
Right.
But then nobody knows what they're dealing with.
Yes.
So you might as well just tell it how it is and move on. And people but you don't have to do it in a way that's going to offend people. And you gotta.
No, there's lots of ways to communicate something accurately without doing it in a, like you said, in an offensive manner or.
But people are so easily offended now, and
Yes.
that's the frustrating part because
Yes.
you can't have civil discourse without it just turning.
You're not
into
allowed
hate.
to disagree with someone across the table. You know what I mean? Like if hypothetically, like if I was a Democrat and you were a Republican, like today's world, we're not allowed to get along and have common ground or anything that way.
And the people who are most angry are the people who aren't even really Democrats or Republicans. They're so far to one side or the other that they've completely lost sight of what those parties actually originally stood for.
Yes.
And that's the part that it's almost comical in a way, but it turns you off to the whole process too.
Yeah. No, yeah. Okay. So, go back to your 14-year tenure now that we're working on as you've gotten into your mayor role. So you get this wellness center up and running. You've rehabbed 3 buildings in the process, which is freaking cool. Funded mainly by grant money. So this isn't even
All by grant money.
So this isn't even costing the city anything really at this point. So win-win all around kind of a deal. So then once you get that done, what's your next sort of, what are you looking at next?
Here's the thing, and I got to be careful with this because I know that I've been a very integral part of revenue. Okay. I mean, I know that I've been the grant writer, and I know I've either been a cheerleader or going out to outside sources. So I know that I've been part of this, but there's no one person that gets to make all the decisions. And so when I'm saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm really coordinating with the council, a public works guy, outside agencies, city clerk. I mean, you're making a team move forward.
Right.
And so we've had a lot of good things happening over these 14 years. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of different people. And sometimes I got along with them, sometimes I didn't. But they've all brought something important to the table. And I don't want to minimize that. But I do know my role has been the rainmaker. And I'm proud of that part. And I'm also the guy who looks at things and says, why not? Why can't we do that? They did it. Why don't we do it? We can do it better. And then sometimes you need somebody else more level head saying, listen, slow down. We don't have to do it all at once. And I have a habit of sometimes, you get running so fast, your legs can't quite keep up. And so I need that sometimes. And that's good. We've had some really level headed people who've come along and been the voice of Jiminy Cricket,
Yeah.
so to speak. My wife included. I mean, she'll say, well, slow down. and that's been good.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is like you get a catalyst on Main Street that is the wellness center.
Here's the thing. It's not, and I got to qualify this too. It's the Main Street was why I wanted to do it. I wanted this house to be full of stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you've got administrative issues. You've got budget issues. You've got your streets. You've got water infrastructure. You've got sewer infrastructure. You've got equipment that's falling apart. You've got city buildings that need attention. You've got all these different things they don't tell you about. And then you got all these different regulations and different things coming up from the DNR and the EPA and all whatever. And then you have a tornado, or then you'll have a derecho come in, or whatever. And so there's always something to get in your way and derail you. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to be able to just have vision to see it all. It's kind of like we were watching the game today earlier, Caitlin Clark, how she can look at the court and sees everything. Well, if you want to be effective, you got to look at everything. And I think one of the things, and everybody's got their strengths. There's some things I'm just not very good at. But I think one of the things I do fairly well is I can see a lot of different variables at once. And in a very short period of time, I can just find a way to put those pieces together and just kind of keep things working. And that's probably the only reason I've kept my sanity with all the different things. Because, we've replaced our sewer lagoon in this town. Huge expense. We're still paying on it, by the way. And that fell in my lap when I first got here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first thing I had to deal with. That and a lawsuit they were fighting with somebody over, and man, I just got this job. I don't want to do that, but here I am playing lawyer, And then, we had some major storm mitigation. We've done some major stormwater repair, and we've upgraded, Highway 65 that come through, and now we're working on the Heart of Iowa Trail, and so once you get a catalyst. That helps you get a lot of other things going, and some of the more sexy projects, I'll call them, which is a new wellness center. People like to give money to that, but who wants to give money to a sewer lagoon?
Yeah.
There's no plaques down there you can go look at to recognize people. So, you're trying to make things happen on Main Street, but on the same time, you've got stuff going on over here that nobody's seeing about or talking about that you still got to balance and make happen at the same time. So there's no catalyst for those stuff. You just have to find a way to do it. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about Main Street, you talk about the wellness center, then you get a facade grant to just, because one whole side of the town was just painted brown. You know how depressing that is?
Was it really all brown?
Well, if you go down the street here, the brown on the Patterson building down there,
yeah,
the whole other side was brown.
Oh.
And so I just got a facade grant to the county, which I, been encouraging anyway. And so I got some paint, and we hired somebody to paint it, That was pretty easy. All of a sudden, wow, that looked really good. And then you tear down an old building across the street, the old grocery mart, Barrett's Grocery Mart. We tore that down because the whole roof was in. I got some grant money for that, and so we tore that down and put an amphitheater. And we got the mural walk, and and just keep. And then pretty soon, what happens is as you start doing that, other people start seeing changes, and then they start making investment, and they start doing things. And you're an example of that. I hunted you down at a flea market to get you to come town.
That's what I always tell people, because they go, wow, how did you wind up in Collins? I said, it was Brett. I said, it was the mayor. I said, I went and looked at that building. I said, the only reason I knew it existed was because of 1 Million Cups. Ames Chamber is now Greg Picklap, who, we work with a lot. Greg Picklap, the person who had his position 2 people ago, Dustin is his name. He had said, hey, there's this building for sale. Do you want to go take a look? And so I came down and I took a look. And, I think I brought my dad down at that time to, check things out and everything. And I remember the ride home, me being like, yeah, it's like 25 minutes away. I was like, I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit far away. Not like 3-4 days later, you show up at my booth at the Ames Farmers Market and you say, here's my phone number. We want you in Collins. And I was like, well, maybe I should, give it another look. And not maybe 3-4 weeks later, I'm closed on the building, and here we are.
So, and a podcast,
yes,
rambling on.
Yeah.
I think when people feel like their contribution is needed or important or valued, the buy-in becomes much stronger.
Yeah.
And that's whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in as a city, in the military. I mean, I had guys that led you can always tell the good ones from the bad ones in terms of leaders, because the guys who were the good ones, we'd run off a cliff for them. And those people always wanted to emulate. And what was about them? Well, number one, they made us feel like we were all important. We were valued. Even if we were the lowest guy on the totem pole, they'll still made us feel like we had some value. And that's the way I try to treat kids in my class. It's the way I try to treat people in town. And sometimes I do better than others times. I mean, but relationship building is everything. And I think one of the things, as a county-wide, as a city-wide, I think the more outreach you have to people and different groups and communities and organizations and stuff, that just the stronger we are as a whole.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. And so what do you feel like has been, what's one of it might be the very first project that was thrown in your face, right? When you first started, it might have been that lagoon project and the lawsuit associated and everything. What do you feel like has been the most challenging project over your tenure so far?
Oh, I think painting some of the bricks on City Hall was my biggest.
Oh my God.
That was
Can you tell that story? So I have heard this story kind of secondhand through a few people. Can you tell this story?
Well, you know what? I asked the council, and I didn't do it without asking, but I said, listen, I want to do a little painting. I paint a couple of bricks and stuff on that. Go ahead, whatever. At this point, they whatever, they didn't care. And so I got some paint and I painted the bricks. Well, there were kind of people a couple people, one in particular, who was just, oh boy, I had literally destroyed the earth. I mean, we're having a meltdown because of paint on these bricks, this historic building. And I hate to tell them, but the bricks part of the paint was just to protect the bricks so they didn't decay any further, because they were literally, we couldn't afford a tuck point, and we couldn't afford to, it was just bad. And it's a really old building. And so we just painted a few of the bricks like underneath the windows. And it was just bad. And my choice of initial color didn't help me any.
What was your choice of initial?
It was like a blue color, which it really popped. I thought it was cool. And then, but I used that as a primer, and I ended up covering it with red, which actually matched the trim from the new roof we had to put on there. And now they didn't say anything about drilling holes in it and putting the digital sign on the same wall, but that little bit of paint, I thought I was going to have to, it was bad. And then I think I brought up the idea of having a dog park in town, and I didn't even do anything with it, and I had a petition, going against it, just crazy. I'm like, and one of the people was saying, we don't want, dog feces all over and stuff. And our kids play down that park. So, well, the idea is to keep it out of the park and in an area where it's contained. I mean, and that's still not a dead issue. I still like to get one of those, but I don't know. It's usually the little stuff. It's not the big stuff.
Yeah.
It's usually little stuff.
The little stuff that you don't see coming as it's going to be a problem.
But then you see, you have things like, we were able to get a couple grants for a meals program in town, and one through CDBG and one through the county. And so on a couple occasions, we were able to just feed people for free. And the amount of people that show up to that thing and the amount of goodwill that would spread, and even when people had to sit and wait in line, they just sit and talk and have a conversation. And it was just a really... for every negative thing, there's always something that overwhelmingly just makes it a beautiful thing. And, having those little victories like that are just way better memories.
Yeah. Like I said, I think I heard that brick painting story initially from Dustin, because I think that you guys had like maybe 3 or 4 council meetings like where that came up as the issue.
It's either that or a dog issue or something. I mean, it's usually, it's stuff that just doesn't affect the viability of the town long term.
Right.
I mean, we're trying to come up with ways on how to increase tax revenue without actually increasing tax revenue through TIF. And we're trying to find ways to, fix this problem and fix that problem and try to help somebody over here who is not in their home, or, whatever, a million different things. And then, you're battling over
bricks,
bricks or dogs, and, or cats. So it's just like, man, those are the things I hate. I hate those meetings.
Yes, but they're all part of it.
But one of them I brought on myself. I should have anticipated there'd be somebody mad about it.
Of course.
And, She still won't talk to me.
That's fine.
I built a whole historical society for him. And she's on that crew, and she still won't talk to me. But that was all grant money too.
Yeah.
Never got to thank you on that one either.
That's okay. Well, I'll tell you thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. That's okay. I don't care if I get thanks or not. I really don't. I mean, looking at it, knowing that I had a hand in it, and once again, I had a hand, makes me feel good.
Yeah. So now, as you are, 14 years into this, you have really seen, Main Street transform. There's been other things that you guys have been able to get across the line, improvements you guys have made. Do you get the same sense from those people back in 2010 that said this town's dying, we're going to have to unincorporate?
Some of them have expired.
Okay.
I mean, that changes things.
Well, yes, but the ones who are still around, do you get the vibe from them that...
No, I don't feel that I haven't felt that in probably 10 years. I mean, that started trickling away rather quick when you started making some changes. All you got to do is breathe a little life into something, and all of a sudden people realize it's still got a future.
Right.
And then they become active participants in making that future more viable. And I haven't seen or felt or sensed that, that doom and gloom for a long time, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. Because, the library improvements, I had nothing to do with that other than administrating the building or leading the meetings that approved the expenditure. This much, but I know that when you see change happening in town, it inspires other people to take up the mantle and so I think in some small parks, some of these other things, we're probably helping that. And then you got other businesses and you coming in and doing what you did in this building. And once again, you got to have a catalyst. And I think the first thing of this Main Street was that wellness center by hands down.
Yeah. And then everything kind of snowballed
just
from there.
Started, it didn't happen overnight, but started rolling through and happening.
Yeah. So I just had coffee very recently with another Brett who's a mayor, not currently serving as mayor in Nevada, but Brett Barker.
Yeah.
And he said
he's running for
House, Iowa
DO
House
spot.
Yes. But so he's served quite a few terms in Nevada as mayor, and they've also done a lot of things on their Main Street. Like Nevada's really transformed, I would say, in the last 10 years.
Oh yeah, they did a nice job.
1,000%. But he said one of the common misconceptions about a mayor position is like once you get elected, like you don't have any power to like necessarily do anything. It's not like you're out here giving executive orders or anything like that.
But you do though. You have the ability to empower other people.
So that's what he said. He said, I have the ability though to be the biggest cheerleader for everyone. To, like you said, to empower people, to make them understand or realize the difference that they can make, the impact that they can make. Is that?
No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, and it's not just that. It's about, you're also a pitch man. Pitching ideas. And I'm one of those people who always sees one thing. What about this? Or what about this? And that goes back a long time too. But you learn that process of just brainstorming. And when you can get other people to have those conversations with you, and it's not a joke, then that's another way you can participate. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just cheerleading people on for their ideas; it's maybe helping influence ideas, or spark ideas, or encourage ideas from your own, babbling, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
and I've always got ideas about something. So
yeah, that is one thing I will say. You definitely are an idea man.
I'm a tinker mentally.
Yeah. Which is a good thing. It keeps you on your toes in many ways. Your wife probably has.
Well, I think she'd be worse if I didn't. I mean, I'd go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I would legitimately go crazy. My mind's always, and I think she wonders, what are you doing? I'm nothing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and sometimes I have to veg out on TV just to quit thinking because my mind's always turning on something, and that's.
It's a gift and a curse.
It is. And my thing is I have been in the service of something bigger than myself my entire adult life. And that's just, other than maybe a couple of years. And I'm 52 now, going on 53. And over time, you start building more and more confidence in what you can do. And I spent a lot of years where I probably didn't have that confidence, and I was bluffing it through bravado or from, whatever, it probably came across as ego or whatever, and sometimes because you're trying to be, but over time you settle down and start, wait a second, I can actually help somebody. I can actually do something good here. And so every time you get to have those conversations, those relationships, build those networks, encourage people, cheerlead, that just adds to the positive influence that you have on the world around you. And I think if I can leave this world having left it a little bit better than when I found it, then that's all I could. Yeah, that's all I could do.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good outlook. So talk to me about your most recent property acquisition.
The old gas station.
Yeah. So what is, do you know the history of that building at all, or?
A little bit. I mean, a lot of my best history I get is from my wife saying, I remember that. This is not, this person used to live here. I think she gets depressed sometimes going up and downtown. All the people she knew lived here, there, and they're all gone.
Right.
And she doesn't know any of the people in town because we just have so many new ones coming in. And, but that was one of several gas stations in town, and that was used to be called Dick's gas station. I don't know maybe the official name, but it was a Phillips gas station. I've seen some pictures of it from the 1960s, and it's but it's been around for a long time, and but it's been storage forever. And I just got sick of looking at it, and finally I just got really lucky and just started talking to the guy who owned it and just built a little relationship with him, and he wasn't going to sell it to anybody at all. And I had no idea. I sent him a letter. He calls me back. I said, what do you think? He said, I'm not going to sell it. I said, okay, well, if you change your mind. And then a couple of days later, he says, well, I think I'm going to sell it. I said, okay. And a day later, I'm not going to do it. A day later, he says, okay, let's do it. And it was literally just like that over a week's time. And so I went to the bank and got the money, and
here we are.
Slowly nibbling away, going into bankruptcy, I guess.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
I mean, I don't have any good plans for it. I've been looking at that for so long. Mm-hmm. And I hate when I drive through a town and I see boarded up windows on Main Street. I really think this is true. It's like just seeing a series of broken dreams or lost dreams or dead dreams. Because each one of those buildings housed somebody's livelihood, something they had their passion, something they believed in, something they wanted to succeed. And sometimes they worked, sometimes they just aged out and were able to retire, sometimes they didn't. I see that gas station as somebody's dream. And I know that dream is long gone, but if I can do something to restore peace, that's like the most iconic building we have in our community. For some reason, I don't know why.
It's super visible.
It's super visible.
You're coming from the south. It is the very first building that you see, partly because it's really ugly green and white right now.
Yeah, well, I'm working on that.
I know. Partly because the color scheme is terrible. It's half painted, but it's so prominently visible.
I'm listening to you. My daughter keeps texting me. I just need to tell her that.
You're all right.
I need to tell her that I'm in an interview.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's one of those, you're coming from the south. That is the very first thing that catches your eye as that bright mint green.
I know. And I don't know what he was thinking with that, but I'm just going to paint it white. Mm-hmm. But it's the biggest problem with that building is the sewer.
Yeah.
Because it's on an old septic, and that's the part I don't have money for. So now I have to wait.
Yeah.
I just have to wait for a while. So it's going to.
Well, if you want to have the septic working, I know a guy who potentially just passed his septic exam.
Well,
and got certified.
I'll talk to you about that. But I think we may have to bore under some stuff and get to it. That's the problem. Otherwise, I'd be.
No, I know. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
We don't know for another. I don't think week and a half whether he passed his test or not.
Well, I don't. So. I won't be doing anything for at least a couple. So I promise you that.
Well, there you go.
Especially since I don't have $15,000 to do what I got to do.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you didn't want to hook up to the sewer and you did want to just stay on septic, I probably know a guy that is now.
I don't think I can stay on septic.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah.
I would love to just have septic there, but. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but my wife and I would talk about things all the time. We'd like to bring back Junior sometimes, and we had a little store here, and Junior worked there, but Junior doesn't have anything since they sold the building and kicked us out. And
yeah.
And really, we didn't make any. We lost money on it, but at least a couple of these older people had a place to go and hang out and do something, give them some meaning in life, and that meant more to me than the money.
Yeah.
People got to have meaning. They got to have something to get up for every day.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that, then what do you have?
Yeah. What do you feel like Is there something Collins is missing right now that is really preventing a next step?
Well, yeah. I think we are always going to be limited for growth because we have nowhere to expand because we're locked in with farmland, and the farmers aren't necessarily eager right now to sell. The other thing is development. We've had, the only reason we've had the housing developments we've had so far is because I've been building houses. I mean, we have one house that I didn't build, but every house that's been built in the last 15 years, I built it if somebody else did. And I'm not a builder. I hired them. I can go to the bank and talk to somebody and give me money for a while, and I'll but my thing is to bring in families and have these. But you have a lot, an in-lot. The way these lots were built out earlier, they weren't built for large houses, and these large contractors, they all want you to come buy $250,000 house, $300,000 house. We can't build something like that. There's parts of this town that flood too. So I mean, traditional housing doesn't work. And so affordable housing in the state of Iowa, they look at anything below $215,000 as being affordable housing. Well, that's not affordable for somebody just starting off. And so if you can build a nice 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house and you can build it on a slab and make it conform within the easement that, the setbacks we have for these lots, and you can sell it, for $150,000 or less, all of a sudden now you have affordable housing that really everybody in the county, everybody in the state should be modeling after, but nobody's building these houses. They're either building the really expensive ones or they're building something that's a tiny home.
Right.
There's nothing in between. Now, I'm sorry, I think I'm fascinated by tiny homes, but I'm not going to live in one.
They're not practical.
They're not practical.
No.
And I'm going to be an empty nester next year. I don't need a 2,500 square foot house. I just don't need it.
Right.
So where's the medium? Where's the middle? And so that's what I put up around town. And so but you're running out of in-lots now. So where do you go now? Mm-hmm. And so you got to be able to expand outward. And we're just not quite there yet. And finding developers who want to come in and spend the money on that. I think it's coming this direction. Mm-hmm. Is it going to come in the next 5 years? I don't know. 10 years? Probably.
Yeah. Right. Well, it'll be interesting to watch our neighbors to the north with Colo as they just, got their new development proposed and approved and all that. I want to say it's like 7 acres. I'll be interested to watch how that all pans out.
Well, I think the more growth we're going to see is actually going to be coming from not so much that direction, but from the other, that Bondurant direction.
Oh, 1,000%.
Trickling this way.
Yes, people that are looking to get out of Bondurant, Altoona, the friggin' Des Moines Metro that is what it is. That Baxter's too complicated to get to.
It's right.
We just...
It used to be Bondurant was the place you moved to if you wanted to get away from the city.
Right. It was the bedroom.
Well, that's gone.
Yes.
Now it's...
It's all one. Yes. And so, that eventually moves. And I tend to agree. I think that it's kind of inevitable. I look at kind of Dallas Center and what's happened to Dallas Center.
Yep.
Like that used to be...
A sleepy little town.
And
used also 1A wrestling school.
Yes. Yep.
DCG.
And so now it is what it is. It's basically...
Huge.
Yeah, it's the same situation. But anyone's guess in terms of timeline of how long that ends up taking, but hard to say. We'll see what happens.
I think that's our biggest hang up. It's just we have no place to grow yet. I think that's going to change. I think this Heart of Iowa trail is coming through, and I've been lobbying with the county for a long time about this, and we're finally getting these changes to Heart of Iowa. We're going to do some park stuff over here. We just got the council to approve a new pickleball court, taking the old tennis court and convert it to a 4-court pickleball court. It's going to be all brand new, refurbished. It'll be done by Collins Days. That's a big one.
Cool.
One of the challenges we have as a city is, and all cities are getting this problem, but we don't have the tax base to do a lot of things big towns do. Mm-hmm. And you got an Ankeny, a Bond, or an Altoona that's growing, and they can TIF these new areas, and they get new businesses coming in, and they can take this the captured revenue that they have from these developments, and they can put that back into infrastructure. We don't have that.
Right.
We do have some TIF, but we put it just to fix up what we've already got, which is the cities and stuff. It's not really geared towards growth. And it's more maintaining what we got or fixing up what we got. And so as a small town, I don't care where you're at, you're going to have those challenges of dealing with minimal resources. And that's where the grant writing's come in for me. And that's why we've had the success we've had.
Yeah.
It's because that extra revenue coming in. And that's something I'll track back to the way I was raised, going off, not having much. We had to figure out a way to do it. The Marine Corp and the Army too, to an extent. Army always had it better than the Marines, but you don't have what you need. Figure it out, make it work. Like, okay, you still got a job to do. And that's the mentality I bring to this place. And I think that's probably helped me be successful in what I do. Everything I do is just going off the idea that you got to find a way to do it, even if you don't have the revenue.
Yeah.
So our biggest challenges are, obviously, we have limits to our growth. But, the revenue sources and things like that that's something you got to deal with.
Right. Well, and that's, going back to the grant writing thing, there was a guy, I think he works for the DNR. I don't remember, but I do know he did some sort of certification at Drake University where they were like focusing on small towns and grant opportunities and things like that. I know. But he was saying in their case study that like they basically found, there's a abundance of funds available to a lot of small towns like ours. It's generally speaking, they're just missing someone to go a champion of the project, shall we say.
Well, and that's tough to do. Like for me, and I've been the champion in terms of, trying to.
You're only one person, you're limited on time, all of the things. Yes.
And we don't have another grant writer in town.
Yeah.
And that's made it challenging for me because there's a lot of things I'd like to be able to do, but it's not my full-time job.
Right.
Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just could get everything I've got into this. Where would we be? And that part is kind of depressing sometimes because I feel like I'm hamstringed. But on the same note, I feel good about what we've gotten considering the amount we've been able to put into it.
Right. What you've, yeah.
And like I said, once again, I'm good at raising money and finding money and doing things like that, but I have to really rely on the people around me to execute something happen and execute it. And
right.
you got, solid people who are competent around you.
It helps.
You got to build a team.
Yeah. You got to get people rowing in the right direction.
That's right.
But I think that you've absolutely been instrumental in even just getting them moving in a direction. So when you look at the next 12 months through the lens of Collins or whatever lens you would like, what are you most excited about in the next 12 months?
Well, we're talking about Collins or my life.
Either, both, all the above.
Collins, I'll be happy to see that pickleball court up and seeing the changes that come to the park with that trail coming in, because that'll be like the culmination of a lot of years of lobbying and having conversations and it was some of the stuff with the COVID money that came in and things like, and some things happened because of events that way beyond Collins, but we were lucky the county was really good at this, and we've been really good about jumping on those opportunities, being the first one in line saying, I'm ready. Mm-hmm. And preparedness is what makes that happen. If you're ready to jump on an opportunity, then you don't have to worry about them passing you by because you're right there to put your hand up and say, I'm ready to execute. And then if you actually do execute, then people want to give you more money. It's funny how that works. Mm-hmm. And so we've been done so I'm excited about that. I'm excited that we're actually we're finishing up for the first time. This community center's primarily done. We got some baseboard to put down. That's a big deal. And, I think I'm just getting ready to be an empty nester here. And I've been thinking about my career and things like that. And I'm 52, almost 53. And I'm really just thinking about what it's going to look like next. What's going to be like just me and my wife. That's almost a lot for me.
Yeah.
I started helping. There's a girls wrestling program. I'm kind of excited about that at our school. I'm still coaching wrestling. I don't know how much longer. That's got me kind of excited. But I also, there's some things with the county. I'm extremely passionate about veteran affairs. I'm extremely passionate about maintaining that memory. And I see all the potential with all these different organizations that are already out there. And I'm thinking, man, I could bring those people together. I mean, I know I could do this. I know I could do that. And whether I ever get a chance to or not, I don't know. But I mean, you start thinking about all the things that could happen, and that gets you excited. It keeps you young, or it makes you old, one of the two. But those are, I guess, some of the things the next 12 months I'm kind of wrap my mind around.
Yeah, I like it. So is there anything else that you want to share with people? Anything else you want to highlight? Anything you wish people knew?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things great about this town, and we're still not done yet. And I think there's room for somebody real soon to step in and take over for me. I really do. And I'm hoping whatever I've done up to this point in my role has set some next person up for success. But the next person probably needs to be stepping up sooner than later, because I'm at that point. We probably need somebody with new blood, new ideas. And I've got some new challenges I like to go. I want to write a little bit. I do artwork on the side. I've got a book on Amazon, which nobody read, but I've got it out there in case
What's
you want to read
the name of it?
A Teacher's Journey.
Okay.
Yeah, it's self-published. It's the people who've read it like it. It's only about a 2 or 3 hour read. But I don't know how to market things like that. So I don't have social media. So it really messes me up. I'd like to do a little more writing. And there's other things I'd like to do that may take me beyond being mayor. And plus, like I said, my wife and I are going to have to figure out how to be together after all these years of raising kids. It's always been about somebody else. Yeah. Even this weekend, we spent the whole, 6-7 hours. We couldn't even, we're like little kids. We kept getting text messages. Hey, where are you at? Where are you at? I'm like, you guys are like adults now. What do you care where I'm at? Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to figure that out. And maybe we want to travel. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You'll have time.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'm young enough to enjoy it.
You are.
There's some people who retire and they're gone in a month. I don't want to lose that time.
I also don't think that you're one to traditionally retire. I think that, like you said, you have so many ideas, you have so many things that you'll always be involved in something. You'll always be doing your art. You'll be writing. You'll be doing, you won't be.
Well, as an educator, I think I'm getting to a point where I need a new adventure.
Yeah.
And 25 years of this, I think there's a couple opportunities that might pop up that I might be able to jump on and make something happen and take the last 10 years of my, actual working time and see if I can't build something with it. But I don't know.
They say and by they, I mean somebody else that I previously interviewed on this podcast said that the best cure for burnout is a new project. And I said, I think there's a lot of truth in that.
I think you have to be, and I mentioned this earlier, you have to be very curious in life. Mm-hmm. And I think you don't have to be curious about everybody you see, but you have to be curious about your own limitations. And if you aren't trying new things, I don't care if you're 15 or 25 or 55, you may not know what you're great at yet until you start asking some questions and try it. And there's a lot of things I haven't tried yet. The days of me rappelling off of mountainsides and fast roping out of helicopters or kicking indoors, that's long gone. I can barely walk up a set of stairs now, but there's still things I can do, and there's still ways I can help. And I know that luckily my kids are all on the straight and narrow. My wife's got a good head on her shoulders, and I'm real proud of some of those things. And I just think, with a little grace from God, I'll just keep on going and try to do something else good. Yeah,
I think it's awesome. Well, I can tell you, I am super appreciative of all you've done for this town. You've laid a lot of groundwork before we arrived in town, shall we say, to pave the way, make it maybe a little easier, a little more amenable for some of the conversations, like getting this catalyst grant, things like that, where we had to work with the city. That I think, had you not already convinced a few people that, hey, maybe somebody with a crazy idea, like maybe we just let them do it and, see what comes of it.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And so I think, had you not fought some of those battles earlier on in your tenure, that something like this that we did here.
Well, I love crazy ideas.
Yeah.
I made my resume off them,
We're full of them. So,
no.
So yeah, and like I said, the only reason that I ever wound up in Collins is because you stopped at my booth and said, we want you here.
Just imagine you might be the next mayor.
Yeah. I don't think this is not a mayoral campaign announcement.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you. Yeah, also busy humans with lots of other ideas too.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So was I.
Yeah. I know how that goes. So anyways, thank you very
No
much
problem.
for sitting
This
down
was
and
my first
chatting.
podcast, fairly painless.
Yeah. I try to make it relatively painless.
I tried not to say anything that would really get me in big trouble.
Yeah.
Or
I don't know.
have
You
to be
brought those
redacted.
bricks up again. So
I'm not sure they'll be listening, but we'll see.
You never know. You never know.
You never know.
Anyways, anything else you want to leave people with?
No, I will say this though. Part of my big motivating factor for doing this, being a mayor, was because of my kids, my wife, and my wife's grandparents. And that's always been a motivating thing. I wanted my kids to have something to come back to. And I wanted to have something here that remind my wife of the way it used to be, type of thing. I mean, that's a big motivator. And, some of the best things I've done is because of them. And I want to make sure they know I appreciate them, and people know that I'm still, it may not always seem like, because I'm kind of like a bulldozer when I walk into things. I had to learn a long time ago that I used to walk in the office with the secretaries. I'd walk in and say, I need this, and you just forget, you got to step back, and they're not where you are. You got to have some, hi, how you doing? How's your day going? Oh, by the way, could you help me out with this? Let them have a chance to acclimate to your dynamic. And it took me a long time to figure that out, and sometimes they don't figure it out, but I'm extremely proud of my kids. And I think maybe there's something I'm doing that's been a good example, because my youngest daughter's been kind of a beast in school. And I know that's a lot of it's because of her mother too, but I don't know. I'm very proud of my family. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished in this town as a community. And I just hope the town lives, for another 100 years or more, with or without me. So
Yeah.
it'll be without, because I don't make it that long, but that's where I'm at.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Again,
Thank you.
for sitting down and doing this.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
guys.